Well, I kind of brought it up because I just think at the end of the day that I think the bailout bill that was passed was a monstrosity. Having to put all that pork in there, I mean, I think it's bad enough. You know, the legislation says the secretary shall do or shall be able to do this or that. The secretary, meaning the secretary of the Treasury. Well, who's going to be secretary of the Treasury 3.5 months from now? First of all. And not that I really want those powers given to Paulson anyway. I mean, he's a smart guy, I'm sure. I mean, he'll rise to the top at Goldman Sachs without being a smart person. But it's just there's who's buying mortgage-backed securities. I've never done it. I do work in the financial world, but I know people who have been involved in it, and they say it's a pretty tricky proposition. Now we're going to put that power in deciding what to buy these securities for in the hands of the federal government. It's a recipe for trouble, that's for sure. And it's a bad situation. And one other thing is the concept that capitalism and free markets are responsible for this. Maybe they're partially responsible. The government has their fingerprints all over this subprime debt problem. Subprime mortgage problem. Between Freddie and Fannie, they got caught in accounting scandals back in 03 and 04, and as a part of their penance, they said, "Oh, we're going to buy the debt of these subprime mortgages so these poor people can buy these houses," and the Community Reinvestment Act, and the fact that it's just the federal government for a long time has been pushing this concept of homeownership. When I think the government ought to be neutral on it, frankly. It's for people to decide whether they want to own a home or not. And I don't know, manias happen. That is one thing where we are the only species that can stand on the shoulders of our ancestors and benefit from their development. My dog is no smarter or no more talented or doesn't know more than her great-great-great-great-great-great-great-great-grandmother. But it's not that way for human beings. But we seem to fall into these manias and tech stocks, housing, the tulip bulb crisis way back when in the Netherlands. So I don't think right now, just as with energy prices, I don't think there's a lot the government can do in the short run. But in the long run, it needs to get its house in order and adopt more sound fiscal policies. And that's what it has to do to return to prosperity in the long run, and in the short run, do no harm. And I think I talk to people who know a lot more about this than I do, and they're not sure what's happening. I talked with a financial expert last night who is frequently a contributor to the Wall Street Journal and major media organizations, and he says, "I'm not really sure what's happening out there, and I don't know how it's going to play out." So we'll see. Roy. Okay. Go ahead. That's all right.
Could you expand a little more on the healthcare voucher idea you were talking about in the context of Medicare, and who exactly will be determining how much of a voucher people get?
I don't know offhand. I'm just talking about a concept here that instead of having the government pay for and being the decision maker, so to speak, between in terms of expenditures of money between doctors and patients, we need more consumerism in our healthcare. We have too much in the way of third parties intervening between doctors and patients. And all I'm saying is that, it's been proven in studies that if people don't pay for some of their medical care, they'll buy more of it. And I just think that people need to be spending their own dollars or spending something that they can save for the future and not be in a situation where you use it or lose it, so to speak. We need to introduce, a lot of people don't like me, sort of backing up here, I do not view healthcare as a right. It's certainly not in the U.S. Constitution that the federal government is responsible for healthcare, but from a moral standpoint, I don't think people have the right to demand services of others. And so therefore, healthcare, in my opinion, is not a right. And I know that's not a terribly popular position these days, but I think it's the right one. But we are where we are with Medicare, and all I'm saying is that we need to provide incentives for Medicare recipients to cut back on their expenditures for health care, and I think vouchers is a way to go in that regard.
Would you talk a little bit about social issues? In particular, as you know, I'm interested in drug laws. I know that there is a bill in Congress to permit medical use of marijuana. I believe Barney Frank has a bill in to make it absolutely to force the Drug Enforcement Agency to reclassify marijuana and take it out of Schedule 1. And there is a federal policy following federal law which says that if the student is busted for any drug offense, that from that moment they lose any federal aid to education. You be in favor of those measures?
Am I in favor of? I'm in favor of doing. I think doing well. There are some laws there that you want to do away with, and there are some that you want passed. So I would be in favor of medical marijuana. I mean, it is ridiculous, the fact that the federal government, same people who talk about states' rights, as soon as you can talk about medical marijuana, oh no, we can't have that. No. And so, yes, there ought to be respect for the states on the medical marijuana issue. I'm all for reclassifying. I think you're talking about the Barney Frank, Ron Paul bill that would reclassify marijuana to a very minor offense. And then to do away with the current law that affects potential student aid for marijuana offenses. Of course, one might argue that in a libertarian society there wouldn't be any federal student aid, but that's a separate issue, so we won't go there right now. But yeah, I mean, we've got to cut it out. This drug war thing is so ridiculous and so counterproductive, and the violence is moving north, aside from the violence that we're already experiencing here in the United States. But again, here's another war we can't afford. This whole fiscal crisis, it just cries out for the federal government to reduce its spending, to get its fiscal house in order, to do all it can to increase prosperity in the United States. I don't think that's the message that people on the Hill are hearing, but it's the message they ought to hear.